Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Really? You have good eyesight. Very good. And there's two groups of people here, right? There's some of your associates and some of your wife's Bhakti Vriksha group.
And Naperville Congress.
And Naperville congregation. So 3 sets. So it's not that everybody knows everybody, but and I see a few children here. Do you know the story of Prahlad Maharaj?
A little bit.
I'm asking her. I'll ask you next. Do you know the story of Prahlad Maharaj? Yeah. Tell me one thing about Prahlad Maharaj. One thing. Who is Prahlad Maharaj? He's a what?
Devotee.
He's a devotee. But you're a devotee. So, he's a devotee. Something about Prahlad Maharaj? Yes. Yes, you.
He is a great devotee of Lord Krishna, and when every time his father tried to kill him, he somehow
Protected.
Lord Krishna protected him.
Okay. Very good. Very good. How about you? Something about Prahlad Maharaj. Anything.
He was the son of Hiranyakashipu.
He did what?
He was the son of
He was the
Hiranyakashipu.
son of Hiranyakashipu. He was the son. Who did he worship?
Krishna.
And in what particular form of Krishna?
Narasimha.
Ah, I heard somebody tell you. How about you? Something about Prahlad Maharaj.
Like a lot of people had said, every time his dad tried to kill him because he was worshiping Krishna, he somehow got protected. And then at the end, Narasimha just appeared and killed Hiranyakashipu.
Okay. Okay. Okay, it's pretty basic. We're going to go through some of the details. Yay. The life of Prahlad Maharaj. How far back should we go? We'll go back, way back to the very early stages of creation. At the dawn of creation, you see the picture here, these 4 sons of Lord Brahma, they're called the 4 Kumaras, and their names, Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumar. And they were wandering throughout the 3 worlds. And somehow they, unrestricted by time and space, they made their way to Vaikuntha. That's beyond the 3 worlds, right? Beyond the 3 worlds is Vaikuntha. And who greeted them? Although they were older than Brahma's other sons, like Marichi, there were some sons that were sages, and Marichi was one of those. They appeared like small naked children, only 5 or 6 years old. So the 2 gatekeepers, they got a little bit of a pot belly there. They saw them trying to come through the gate. These 2 gatekeepers, thinking them ordinary children, forbid them from entering. See, they're shaking their fingers, saying, "No, you can't enter." Being checked by the sages cursed them. Being agitated by the material qualities of passion and ignorance, you are unfit to live at the shelter of Mada Dvisha's lotus feet, which are free from such modes. It would be better for you to go immediately to the material world, and take your birth in a family of most sinful asuras. That's Sanat Kumar stepping up on the right side. He's stepping up on the steps and he's shaking his finger at Jai and Vijay or one or the other, saying, "You're unfit to live here. You should go to the material world and take birth in a family of asuras." Now, one of the names of Vishnu or Narayana that's mentioned here is Madhudvisha. Now, some of our older devotees here, raise your hand, don't just speak out. What's the meaning of that name, Madhudvisha? Madhudvisha. I see one hand. Okay, I see more than one hand. All the way over on the steps. Madhudvisha, you're going to take the microphone so others can hear you, right?
The Lord who
You're on. She's on. She's on.
the Lord who envies demon Madhu.
Okay. Dvisha. Madhu, Dvisha. He finished the Madhu and Kaitaba demon. Madhusudana is another name, same as Madhu Dvisha. Prabhupada named one of his disciples, Madhu Dvisha, from Australia. Madhu Dvisha, Swami. So that's the Lord of Vaikuntha. He, at the very, very, very beginning of creation, even before the four Kumaras were born as sons of Brahma, Lord Narayan finished Madhu and Kaitaba. So you're unfit to be in this place where Madhu Dvisha's lotus feet are. Why? Because you're infested with the modes of nature, passion and ignorance. You don't belong here. Because of their offenses at the feet of devotees, these two attendants of the Lord, Jai and Vijay, became, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. In Satya Yuga, Ravana and Kumbhakarna in the next Yuga, or Treta Yuga, and Shishupal and Dantavakra during Krishna's pastimes. So they took birth for 3 lifetimes. Vishnu came, Narayan came. They're very attracted to Lord Narayan. And he even let them inside Vaikuntha. There they are, in the Vaikuntha realm, with the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi by his side, and the other associates. But poor Jai and Vijay, they descended into the material world. And when they took birth in the material world, the whole earth trembled when they took birth. And the elder brother, there were 2. The elder brother was Hiranyakashipu. And he had a younger brother, and the younger brother's name was Hiranyaksha. Check out what he looked like. Ooh, boy. Hiranyaksha excavated so much gold from the earth that it upset the planet's equilibrium and plunged her, the earth planet, into the Garbadak Ocean at the universe's bottom. So what's the structure of the universe is the bottom half is filled with Garbadak Ocean. That's the perspiration from Garbhadakshay Vishnu, where Vishnu reclines at Anantashesh, and poor earth fell plunged into the Garbadak Ocean. The demigods were big anxiety. And they went to Lord Brahma, help! Earth just plunged into the Garbadak Ocean. So Brahma was contemplating what to do. While he was contemplating, from his nostril, a tiny creature in the shape of a boar came from his nostril. Thus, we usually have other things come from our nostrils, but it was a transcendental manifestation of Lord Vishnu. The measurement of the creature was no more than the upper portion of a thumb. But what happened is that creature, who is in the shape of Varaha, Varaha is the name of Lord Boar. Varaha. You know that one? Varaha? Lord Varaha, the shape of a boar? Now you know. Yes, you, in the white dress. Varaha. She's look at her dress. Lord Varaha is the name of a form of Vishnu who takes the form of a boar. You know what a boar is, like a boar? Here's what he looked like. While Brahma was observing him, that boar became situated in the sky, and a wonderful manifestation as gigantic as a great elephant. And what did Varaha do? He plunged into the Garbadak Ocean with his tusks. He lifted the earth planet and raised the earth planet out of the Garbadak Ocean. He rescued the earth. But Hiranyaksha became very angry while Varaha, with his tusks, engaged in uplifting the submerged earth from the depths of the waters, the great demon Hiranyaksha met him and challenged him. Big battle between the two. Guess who won? Varaha defeated the demon Hiranyaksha with one slap of his hoof. They had some battle before that, but it was like a long battle, but he, was having fun. But there you see the earth at the bottom, on the bottom right side of that painting. That's the earth planet kind of floating on the Garbadak Ocean while Varaha was doing some battle. And when his elder brother found out that his younger brother was killed by Lord Vishnu, he became extremely angry. And he began to lament. Filled with rage and biting his lips, Hiranyakashipu gazed at the sky with eyes that blazed in anger, making the whole sky smoky. He took a vow. I will kill that person, Vishnu. Not possible, but he tried. I will kill Vishnu because he killed my brother. I want revenge. He then decided he wanted to become immortal. Is anybody immortal? No such thing. No. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, for one who has taken birth, death is certain. One who has taken birth, death is certain. And one who dies, birth again is certain. Well, with one exception, unless you go back to Godhead. So he wanted to become immortal with his present body, which wasn't possible. So what did he do? He went to the forest and he did this intense austerity, really intense. Try it sometime. You don't have to try it, but he stood on his tiptoes with his arms raised over his head. How long can you do that? And he stayed there. He didn't eat. He didn't drink. He breathed air, and he sustained his body for 100 celestial years. He became so intense in his austerity. Look at this. From his head came fire. And the demigods were fearful. So what did the demigods do? The demigods requested Brahma, help. So, meanwhile, back in Hiranyakashipu's kingdom, he had a wife. His wife's name was Kayadu. Kayadu was pregnant, and while she was pregnant and Hiranyakashipu was gone from the capital, what happened? The demigods who had lost their kingdom decided, now's our chance. Hiranyakashipu's gone, let's go. So they took all their weapons They invaded his kingdom, and when they took over, the rest of the associates of Hiranyakashipu, they fled. And when they fled, they took over the kingdom. And when they took over the kingdom, they found Kayadu, and she was pregnant. So they decided, uh-oh, Hiranyakashipu Jr. is going to take birth. And so they arrested her with the plan that when the child was born, they would kill the child. Well, that was their plan. But Narada Muni had a different plan. You see Narada Muni on the left side? How do you know he's Narada Muni? He's carrying a veena, right? Yeah. You know what a veena is? It's a musical instrument, long strings, big gourd at the bottom. That's Narada Muni. So Narada Muni stopped them. Said, what are you doing? There's a pregnant woman. And he took her, he said, turn her over to me, because the child in her womb is not Hiranyakashipu Jr. He's a great devotee. Now, how did Narada know that? Well, Narada knows things that we don't know. A great sage and realized pure devotee can see things that we can't see, and he knew. So immediately, really nice. Immediately, they're like, we're going to take over. They immediately turned her over to Narada. They circumambulated her 3 times, because within her womb is a great devotee. And they returned to their heavenly planets. So Narada took her to Kayadu, to his ashram. There you see Narada's instructing Kayadu. Kayadu made a request. You're a great sage. My husband is off in the forest doing his austerities. Can you give me this benediction that my child will not be born until he returns? And it was a long time until he returned. It was 100 years. Poor Kayadu, carrying a child for 100 years. But that's what happened. And while she was in his ashram, he engaged her, as you can see, in things like garland making and doing some little seva, while he gave her teachings, transcendental knowledge teachings. And the child within her womb, Prahlad, he heard the teachings. Now, most of the things that we heard yesterday, we don't remember, what to speak of things that we heard when we were in the womb. But he is an exceptional personality. He remembered everything. So 100 years later, Hiranyakashipu returned. But before he returned, when he was standing like this with his arms raised in the air on his tiptoes for 100 years, ants started eating his body. And he just stood there while ants were eating his body. What are you going to do when ants are biting you? You're not going to just stand there. But he was an intense person. He just stood there, and they built a whole anthill around him. And so Lord Brahma came, because these austerity was so intense. Demigods, help! So he came, paid a visit, and he then poured some water from his water pot, and it cleared some of the ant hill structure around his body, and his body became restored to a nice body again. And said, why are you doing all these austerities? What is it that you would like? And he said, I want to be immortal. And Brahma said, even I'm not immortal. I can't give you immortality. Ask for something I can give you. He's very clever. Well, if you can't give me your immortality, then let me try to figure it out, how I can be immortal. And I can't be killed this way, that way, the other way, and the other way, and the other way, and the other way, and this way. I got my bases covered. I can't be killed. Brahma said, sure. But he forgot that Lord Vishnu is that amongst cheaters, he's the cheat. Right in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita. So here's a nice painting. Here's Brahma with his swan carrier, and Hiranyakashipu, who's done some austerities, but his body is restored. So when Hiranyakashipu returned from the forest, Kayadu heard. She requested, I'd like to go back and be with my husband. And by Narada's benediction, the child wasn't born until he returned, and Prahlad was born. He was the eldest of several sons. And he grew up remembering everything he heard from Narada. And so he became a great devotee of Vishnu. And that was a problem for Hiranyakashipu, because Hiranyakashipu saw Vishnu as his enemy. Now here's his son who holds his enemy as his master. You got a conflict situation there. So he wanted his son to be like him, not like Vishnu or Vishnu Bhakta. So he placed his son in the care of his spiritual master's sons, 2 sons. Who's the spiritual master of the demons? Shukracharya. Shukracharya. Shukracharya means he's a seminal acharya. That's what it means. He's not really an acharya, but by birth he was given that title. Not qualified. And he had 2 sons. The 2 sons' names were Shanda and Amarka, and he turned his son, Prahlad, over to them. You train him up to be a nice demon. We have this nice term in ISKCON, we call it Gurukula. You've heard that term before? Gurukula? So they ran an Asura Kula. Kula means school, and how to train them up to be nice asuras. And one day, the father, Hiranyakashipu, affectionate, till he heard what his son had to say, he put him on his lap, very affectionate, and asked him, you've been studying? What's the best thing you've learned from your teachers? Now, I didn't say Shanda and Amarka, but Prahlad considered his real teacher to be Narada. So he told him the best thing that he heard from Narada. Prahlad replied that a man engrossed in material consciousness of duality, thinking this is mine and that belongs to my enemy, should give up his householder life and go to the forest and worship Vishnu. What? Worship Vishnu? Shanda and Amarka, come here at once. You've done a bad thing. Look what you've done to my son. You've trained him to be a Vaishnav instead of an Asura. And they said, wait, don't accuse us falsely. We didn't teach him these things. Don't blame us falsely. You don't accuse a Brahmana like that. That's not the right thing to do. So then he concluded, then must be that one of his friends, he got poisoned. He got bhakti poison from some of his friends. And so you better watch this boy very carefully and make sure he doesn't get any more poison. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. So they took him back to school, and they tried to teach him in all Asura skills. But he couldn't accept any of it. He was like, not at all interested. And then they started accusing him. Where'd you learn this? He didn't say Narada. He just simply said, you'll never understand. Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. Because you're too much attached to this consciousness of friend and enemy, us and them. You're hopeless. You won't understand. They were insulted. But they were hopeless. And some time passed. They tried and they tried. Again, Hiranyakashipu, what's the best thing that you've learned? And what did Prahlad say? Devotional service is the best thing I've learned. It's a nice, important verse. There's 9 processes of devotional service. I'm looking at our younger generation people, including this young girl who's taking notes or making a drawing or something. The 9 processes of devotional service. It's important. That's why I'm catching your attention. 9 processes of devotional service start with these 2. Shravanam Kirtanam. Shravanam Kirtanam. Like you go to school, Shravanam means you hear, Kirtanam you speak. But what's the next word? Shravanam Kirtanam. Vishnu. That's Gurukula. The other is you know what. Vishnu disappears. You don't talk about Vishnu. It's not even allowed in school. You can't talk about Vishnu. That's in Asura Kula. But fortunately, you have nice Vaishnava parents, and so you're learning about Vishnu. That's your Guru Kula. This is your home. And, Sunday school and things like this. You're learning about Vishnu. But reading the Bhagavatam, the stories of Prahlad Maharaj, then you become Vaishnavas. So what's the best thing you've learned? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. What's the next one? Smaranam. What's the next one? Pada Sevanam. Next one? Archanam. Next one? Vandana. What's Vandana? You know anybody named Vandana? It's a nice girl's name or lady's name. Vandana. Means prayer. Prayer. Vandana. 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 Prayer. Then? Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. That's 9. The 9 process. So he said, this is what he said to Dad. Hey, Dad, this is the best thing I've learned. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, etc. Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. So, that's it. You're finished. He decided to kill him. You're devoted to my enemy. That means you're my enemy. Kill him! Just like that. I mean, he was wild. So he tried having him trampled under an elephant. Didn't work. Prahlad ended up on his head. Put him in a vat of boiling oil. He just prayed to Vishnu. He was protected. Feed him to the poisonous serpents. Didn't work. Toss him off a cliff. Look at the bottom. At the bottom of the cliff, there was Vishnu. He caught him. There's the elephant trampling him. There's the serpents. There's the fire. There's the boiling oil. Nothing worked. They tried to kill him many, many ways. Now, Hiranyakashipu started to wonder, who is this boy? Where is he getting his powers? So he went to his teachers. What should I do? He said, don't worry. It's just one of those things. He'll get over it. We'll train him up very nicely to be a nice asura. Don't worry. We're really good. Because he was at wit's end what to do. He tried to kill him. Couldn't kill him. We'll train him up to be a good asura. No problem. So he went back to school. And one day, the teachers left the classroom. And what do children do when the teacher leaves the classroom? They want to play. Yeah, party, right. Yay, sound and a marker gone. Let's have a good time. And Prahlad said, wait a minute. And he gave him the same teachings that he heard from Narada. And it was really nice. They really liked it. A whole chapter. And then at the end of the chapter, they said, this is great. Where'd you hear this from? We never heard this before. And then he told them how I learned it. I learned it when I was in the womb of my mother. Narada gave all these teachings. The problem is, my mother, she forgot. Because when she got into Hiranyakashipu's association again, after Narada's ashram, she became again so attached to Hiranyakashipu, she forgot everything. But I didn't forget. And that's where I learned it. Then he went on with some more of the teachings. And he ended up having them stand up in the classroom and chant Hare Krishna. Look at that. And when they were chanting Hare Krishna like that, Chandramarka came in. What? What's going on? They immediately ran to Ranikashipu. Look what he's doing. He's not corrected. He's corrupted. He's hopeless. Ranikashipu was ready to kill him himself, rather than having other people try to kill him. So he came and confronted Prahlad. Who is this Vishnu you're talking about? You say he's everywhere. Where is he? He's everywhere. You know the story. What did he say next? Is he in this pillar? And Ranikashipu looked at the pillar. Prahlad looked at the pillar. There he is. There's Lord Nrsingadev. Yeah, he's in the pillar. He's the all-pervading Vishnu, so he's ready to smash the pillar. Here's a nice drawing, very old drawing. There's Prahlad pointing. There he is, in the pillar. And there's Hiranyakashipu seated on his throne. So one presentation says he smashed the pillar with his sword. Another presentation says he smashed the pillar with his fist, and the fist broke open. Excuse me, the pillar broke open. Lord Nrsingadev appeared, roaring, really loud. The Supreme Personality of Godhead exhibited a wonderful form never seen before. Angry. Why was he angry? Because he was trying to harm, not just harm, kill Prahlad. His devotee, pure devotee, perfected devotee. Finished. So they started a big fight. Hiranyakashipu thought, oh, this is just some mystic power, but I have more mystic power than anybody. So they had a big fight, and we know who won. Lord Nrsingadev won. Mm-hmm. And he maintained the promise or the benediction of Lord Brahma. What was the benediction of Lord Brahma? I can't be killed indoors or outdoors. No problem. It was on the veranda, which is neither indoors nor outdoors. I cannot be killed during the day or the night. No problem. It was at dusk. So this coming Saturday, 1 week from today, we'll be observing the appearance day of Lord Nrsingadev, who appears at dusk. It's neither day nor night. Dusk. The sun has set, but it's not dark of night yet. That's dusk. That's when Lord Nrsingadev appeared. And can't be killed by man or beast. No problem. Half man, half beast. It can't be killed by any weapons. No problem. It was his nails. He upheld the benedictions of Brahma, and he finished Hiranyakashipu. Supporting him on his thighs, in the doorway of the assembly hall, he very easily tore the deep into pieces with the nails of his hands. And you see he's wearing a garland. The garland was the inside of his body, his intestines. Blood all over the place. And when Hiranyakashipu was killed, what happened? All of his associates came running to take revenge. What did Nrsingadev? He manifested many, many, many more arms and was loudly roaring. And look at those guys holding upside down, being dropped and smashed and finished. Boy, was Lord Nrsingadev angry. And so the demigods had witnessed all this. And witnessing, they then came forward to appreciate what he had just, he rid the universe from a terrorist, a universal terrorist, not just this part of that part of the Earth planet. Universal terrorist, finished. And all of his buddies, finished. So they praised him, and they prayed to him to become, you're reenacting what's on the screen here? Yeah. Look, they're upside down. Look at this guy. There's some other people. Look at this guy. He's losing his head. There's one of the claws of Lord Nrsimhadev finishing him. There's another guy. There's another guy. And anybody that went after him, same thing. Demigod's prayers didn't work. Nothing worked. There's the demigods standing by his side. When their prayers were unsuccessful, the demigod's prayers didn't pacify him. They approached Prahlad, headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. Please pacify him. They'd never seen a form like this before. He was so angry. So there goes Prahlad. At the encouragement of the demigods, there's Lord Nrsimhadev seated on this high throne. There's ripped apart bodies strewn here and there. And he came before Lord Nrsimhadev. He paid his obeisances, prostrated before the feet of Lord Nrsimhadev, who picked him up with his hands or his claws, whatever, and embraced him. And placed his hand on Prahlad's head, because Prahlad wanted to offer prayers, but he was stunned. And he's just a little boy. What does he know how to offer nice prayers? So by placing his hand on his head, the commentary says he immediately achieved Brahma Gyan, spiritual knowledge. And beautiful prayers, nice section. We've been reading that in the evening classes. At the end, Lord Nrsimhadev wanted to bestow a benediction upon Prahlad. What did Prahlad say? Besides saying no thanks, he said something very nice. He said, it's the relationship of business. I do something because you give me something. That's how life goes generally. It's contractual. It doesn't have to be with a written contract. I do this, and I have the expectation of that. And when that doesn't happen, and that doesn't happen, and that doesn't happen, the relationship breaks. Because the relationship is based on something entrepreneurial or mercantile. I do this because I get that. He said, I'm not a merchant. I'm not doing something because I want something. In fact, my nature is, I'm born in a demoniac family. If you give me something, I'll just become enamored by that something. So please don't ask me to take something. I only want one thing, that's the association of Narada Muni and Vaishnavas like him, because they'll always sing your glories and remind me of you. Please give that association. So what did Lord Nrsimhadev say? Your devotion is absolutely spotless and pure. I want you to rule the earth planet in place of your father. Now this is the whole text. Prahlad Maharaj did not ask anything from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, he said that if the Lord wanted to give him a benediction, he wanted the Lord to assure him that he would never be induced to take any benediction for the sake of material desires. The Lord gave him the benediction that he would be the king of this material world until the end of the Manvantara, the end of the life of Manu. That's a long time. That's like many, 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 many yuga cycles. And that although in this material world he would have the facility to hear the glories of the Lord and depend fully on the Lord, performing service to him in uncontaminated bhakti yoga. The Lord advised Prahlad to perform sacrifices through bhakti yoga, for this is the duty of a king. So he accepted, because that's what Nrsimhadev wanted, and he just wants what Nrsimhadev wanted, so he did what he wanted. Prahlad Maharaj accepted whatever the Lord had offered him, and he prayed for the Lord to deliver his father. In response to this prayer, the Lord assured him that the family of such a pure devotee as he, not only the devotee's father, but his forefathers for 21 generations are liberated. Pretty good. Pretty good. Are you concerned about your family members? Get liberated. Stand in line for the liberation ticket. And 21 generations. Forefathers. The Lord also asked Prahlad to perform the ritualistic ceremonies for a funeral for his father. Although his father had tried to kill him so many ways, be kind upon it. Very similar to what Lord Ramachandra said to Vibhishan when Ravana was killed. Very similar. Perform the final rites. Because the soul is not the behavior. The behavior of Hiranyakashipu was really bad. But the soul can be cleansed by proper procedures. And so Prahlad is inextricably connected with the story of Lord Nrsingadev and his appearance. So 1 week from today, all of the classes, pretty much, most of the classes will be focused on preparing ourselves for Lord Nrsingadev's appearance next week. So if you're fasting, you should not just fast, you should be meditating on the mercy of Lord Nrsingadev, the purity of Prahlad, the loving exchange between them, and all these wonderful topics, because that's what the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev is certainly connected to his devotees. And hearing about pure devotees is as spiritually potent as hearing about the Lord, because they're intimately connected. So that's what I wanted to do for this time together. Beautiful painting, huh? Some of our temples in ISKCON have deities of Lord Nrsingadev. I don't have all of them, I just have a couple. This is in New Vrindavan, the farm community in West Virginia. And this is in Sridham Mayapur, a very, very merciful deity. There's many, that's 3 manys, stories about the mercy of Lord Nrsingadev going to devotees. He's a very mystical, merciful Lord Nrsingadev. He's like a transcendental doctor. He cures people that come to him. In many cases. There's a whole book that the deity department in Mayapur has compiled about stories about this deity, Lord Nrsingadev. I'll end with just telling a little, a nice story about how this deity of Lord Nrsingadev ended up in Mayapur. Something similar happened in the temple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Down the road, a few miles from our ISKCON temple, is the headquarters of Bhaktisiddhanta during his time, Chaitanya Math. And there were some dacoits that came and caused some difficulty. So what Bhaktisiddhanta did is they had them install a deity of Lord Nrsingadev for protection. Fast forward in time, maybe 70, 80 years later, there was some dacoits that came to our Mayapur temple at night, because at that time, the large Radha Madhava were not there. It was the smaller Radha Madhava brass deities. But Radharani looked golden, and the dacoits thought she's gold, so they snuck in at night to steal Radha Madhava. And as they were stealing, they had Radha Madhava. That's original Radha Madhava, are not on the altar anymore. They took Radha Madhava and were running, and devotees woke up. And they started screaming, chasing after them. Some of you may know Bhakti Raghava Swami, who now has half of one leg missing because the dacoit shot his leg with a shotgun, and he had it amputated, trying to protect. 2 other devotees I know ran after them down the street, where they had pistols. They were firing at them. It was like really dangerous because they wanted to steal what they thought was gold. So after that happened, there was a decision, let us do what Bhaktisiddhanta did. Let us install a deity of Lord Nrsingadev here in Mayapur. That's how it started. And so they consulted here and there who is a celebrated Murti carver. They found one Murti carver in South India that was celebrated for making Nrsinga Murtis. So they're on a train going from Mayapur to South India to meet with the Murti maker to describe what they wanted and why. On the train, one of the devotees had a dream of Lord Nrsingadev that looked like this deity. So when they got to the Murti maker, he described what he saw. He said, "Oh, I know that form of Lord Nrsingadev. How tall do you want him? This and that." And they made some deposit, and then they returned back to Mayapur. Listen to this. There was a man, believe it or not, somebody was envious, and he didn't like the devotees. So he heard that they had gone to South India to get a deity of Lord Nrsingadev. He went to the Murti maker and said, "I'll give you twice as much. You give the deity to me." He said, "I've already promised. I can't go against my word." So when they went to pick up the deity, they were told about this man. There was an envious man that wanted to spend twice as much as they had committed to pay him. He said, "I can't do that. I've committed to give it to you." And then he explained, this form that you asked is called Ugra Nrsinga. And Ugra Nrsinga is such, what I told the man was this: don't worry, this is an Ugra Nrsinga. One who worships Ugra Nrsinga will be destroyed if they're not completely pure. He said, "No problem. You keep the Murti, give it to them." And then the devotee said, "Well, wait a minute. No, are we going to get destroyed?" He said, "What I didn't tell him was," listen to this, "what I didn't tell him was that you need a separate altar for him, but if the deity is the secondary deity behind the primary deity, then Nrsingadev takes on the mood of the primary deity. And your primary deity is Panchatattva, he'll become merciful like Panchatattva. No problem. You're protected." So they brought the deity back, and he's merciful like Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And many, 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 many stories. Maybe one time during this visit, I'll share some of those stories because they're really amazing. He's very merciful, like Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya, very merciful. Maybe I didn't put this here. Just earlier this week on Monday was Akshaya Tritiya. And what do they do what do pujaris, how do they worship the deity in Akshaya Tritiya? Chandan. And when Chandan is smeared all over the body of Nrsingadev, you can see he's got a big smile. When you look at him like this, he looked like really fierce. But for the devotee, this is what Prahlad said in his prayers. I know this feature is meant for Hiranyakashipu, but for the devotee, you're very gentle. So please take away your anger, because Hiranyakashipu is finished. The anger time is over. Now it's smiling time. Okay, so that's our little introduction to Prahlad and Nrsingadev, compliments of the merciful Narada Muni, who gave Prahlad all of the nice instructions that stayed in his heart and are still with him, and our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, who also gave us this understanding. These many, many, many people. Many of you may have grown up in India knowing about Nrsingadev and having some darshan of Nrsingadev, maybe be Nrsinga Bhaktas. But for the rest of us, it's just a gift of mercy. And even if you had some understanding of Nrsingadev from childhood, this will enrich that sense of devotion to Lord Nrsingadev. Great lesson. So many lessons we're spending all this time discussing. If there's some comments or questions, we have a portable microphone, and I hope it works. It's somebody on the stairway, right at the top.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. It's kind of a 2-for-1. I think you're going to answer it very quickly. One is Lord Nrsimha. My understanding is Lord Nrsimhadev is a Leela avatar. Is that correct?
Correct.
Then the next question is, does he appear in all the material universes like other Leela avatars, or is he just special for ours? Thank you, Hare Krishna.
I've never heard any description. There's an assumption that when the Lord appears, it's not our particular universe exclusively, and the other universes are bereft of that mercy. It's for everyone. He's merciful by nature. But it's an assumption. I've never heard any commentary or description that says anything about that. Anything else? Yeah.
When we hear that Hiranyakasipu, Jai Vijay came directly as Hiranyakasipu and Hiranyaksha, I was thinking like people ask the question, does the soul come directly and take birth as a human? So, I mean, we hear that it slides down from Brahma and higher positions like that. So I was just having the contrast in my mind.
They didn't go through Brahma. They came and became Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha directly.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
So when Hiranyakashipu got killed, he went to Brahmajyoti because he again comes back as Ravana, right?
No. Not right. So then the next question is, then where did he go?
Yes, Maharaj.
I asked this question of one of our great scholars, Banu Swami, because he translates things all the time. And his answer to me was he hadn't read anything that said where they went. We know where they didn't go. Where they didn't go is Vaikuntha. It's described, you can read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's further described in Rupa Goswami's Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Doesn't say where he did go, but it says where he didn't go, because he took a birth again and then took birth again. Right? One commentary I read said, those demons who were killed by Leela avatars or forms of the Lord other than Krishna, they attained Vira Swarga. What's Vira Swarga? It's a heavenly realm where persons go who are Kshatriyas who die in battle. They go to heaven. Where? Vira Swarga. So they stayed in Vira Swarga for some time. When it was time for the next Ravana and Kumbhakarna, they descended from that place. And then back to Vira Swarga. And then again, Shishupal and Dantavakra. Then Then they merged, and then from that position of merging, went back to their position of Vaikuntha. That's a detail, but that's where Hiranyakashipu and Hiraksha went. Some interim place. One commentary out of all the things I've searched. Viraswarga.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Uh-huh. I'm looking at the back here. Ladies, please, somebody come up with something.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. It's very wonderful to hear this pastime, even though I don't know how many times. Very, very touching. You mentioned about Prahlad Maharaj not asking Lord Narasimhadev for any benediction. He said, I have this demoniac mentality. I know what happens if I get something. But I'm thinking, he has been in that association and things so much, but the power of instructions he remembered from Narada Muni is so strong that he never deviated. In spite of all that, he is so blissful, he is so fixed up that he is able to impart that to his classmates also. I just would like to hear your comments on that.
Sure. We discussed it yesterday, and it's nice to discuss it probably every day. And the response is, the nature of an elevated person includes humility. In the words of Sanatan Goswami, utter humility. So although he was capable of withstanding bad association or any enticement of material something, which was demonstrated, he did become the king, and he didn't submit or succumb to bad association or material avarice. But he was thinking like that about himself. Yeah. Because of the transcendental humility or utter humility that's part of his elevated consciousness. We kind of have to get used to it. When we hear from elevated souls, they speak in these terms that are like embarrassing. How humble they are. But it's not cosmetic. They're not pretending. They're like, this is what I'm supposed to say, so I'll say it, although it's not what I feel. It's what they feel. It's their utter humility, dainya. So that's where that expression comes from. His humility. And his purity. He doesn't want something. So he asked something for his father, deliverance of his father. He asked something for association of Narada, but just not something material. Because Narada will remind me of Krishna. So I want Narada, association of Narada and people like Narada. I want devotee association because they'll always remind me of Krishna. They'll give me opportunity to hear, chant, and remember about Krishna.
May I ask?
Yes, something else.
For Prahlad Maharaj, he has heard from Narada Muni when he was in the womb, and after that he doesn't have any direct devotee association.
Well, that's yes. However, I mean, maybe yes, but there is a statement in chapter 4 that says he had association, but with elevated souls. Now, how did he get that association over there in Hiranyakashipu land? He didn't have it, so it was by remembrance of Narada, and through that remembrance he had association. I mean, he didn't have an MP3 recorder. He just do a playback and hear all the classes that were going on while he was in the womb. That's not what happened. He just had a memory that he could then remember those instructions. So the answer is, it's a qualified, whether you want to say yes or no. No, he didn't have other association. Yes, he had association by remembrance. And that's also association. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So one thing you mentioned is Prahlad's mother. When Prahlad was 100, he was in her womb. They are in instruction. They are hearing the instructions of the. Both are hearing the instructions from Narada Muni, who is the purest devotee. So 100 years of such an association is left in just 5, or just after seeing the Hiranyakashipu. How can I take that? I mean, how, the association is such a great, right, with Narada Muni, but she's not able to get into the same mindset as Prahlad Maharaj.
Your question is, how did she fall down after all that elevated association?
Right.
That's your question.
Yes.
The answer succinctly, it doesn't give detail, but the answer that Prabhupada provides is she was attached. And because of her attachment, it was like a sieve, all that went out. It wasn't lost permanently, but to her recollection, to her memory, it was lost. The spiritual benefit is eternally there with her, but her memory went for a lunch break. Because of attachment. And that can happen. Okay. Behind you, there's another hand. That was your question. That was my question. Okay. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Do we hear anything about Kayadu after what happens to her after Hiranyakashipu got killed?
In our version of 18,000 verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, nothing is said. However, through spending time with this topic, the whole story of Prahlad Maharaj makes its way into like 8 or 9 different Puranas and other texts. So whether it's mentioned there or not, I don't know, because the BBT hasn't published them, and I don't read Sanskrit. But their passages are in our Bhaktivedanta purports and Brihat Bhagavatamrita, for example, where this Purana, that Purana, the other Purana have the story, and it may say something there about what happened to Kayadu afterwards. I don't know of anything that specifically that says what happened to her afterwards.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This is slightly off topic and a little technical, but I'll ask you anyway. So currently we are reading the second canto, and details of Ashtanga Yoga and all those things are given in minute details.
Which chapter? 2?
Chapter 2.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the things that we read there is that you do the different stages of Ashtanga Yoga is Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pratyahara, so on, all the way until Samadhi and Brahman realization.
Yeah.
Now, after the Brahman realization, the soul has to go and pierce through the layers of the Hiranyagarbha, like the fire, water, earth, ether, and then the false ego and all the senses. Then reaches the Brahma Jyoti. Whereas when Krishna or Rama kills these demons, they also attain Brahma Jyoti. So
Well,
do they
no,
go to...
no, excuse me. I'm interrupting because it's not correct statement. Going back, what happened to Hiranyakashipu afterwards? Where did he go? Did he go to the Brahma Jyoti? The answer is no. So the premise of your question is mistaken. He went somewhere. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answers my question, but I have a follow-up question
Okay,
for that.
go ahead, follow up.
So when we read, when we read the Krishna stories, Krishna book stories,
Yes.
So when the various demons are, killed by Krishna, it is said that they
get liberation.
liberation.
You'll read ahead or look ahead. Canto 2, Chapter 7.
Okay.
It describes again the avatars of Vishnu, and it speaks about Krishna. And about Krishna, there's a really long list
Okay.
of those killed by Krishna or devotees of Krishna, including Arjuna, Bhima, Balaram. They achieve liberation. In contrast to demons that were killed by other forms of Vishnu. So now, what happens to those souls? It depends. But do they pass through those layers like you described? Of course. But how long does that take? Like a flash? That's how long it takes. Because time and space are material, and the liberated soul isn't confined by material. They get liberation. So the destination depends upon Krishna ultimately. It can be the Brahma Jyoti, or it can be some place in the spiritual world.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. So Maharaj, luckily in this world or today's age, we don't have
Speak
Hiranyakashipu.
slowly, please.
Yeah, in today's age, luckily we don't have somebody like Hiranyakashipu. But of course, I guess we may have something different like hatred and terrorism. And my question is, I feel like it's very difficult to tackle those issues,
Which issues now?
hatred and terrorism.
In this world, when you
Yes.
see people that are hateful, you have a difficulty in handling that situation.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
Yes, Maharaj. So how we deal
What
with
to
that?
do?
Yes.
Well, you have the choice. You can suffer or you can transcend. And supposing you're not there yet, you're not transcendental yet, you tolerate. And try to stay fixed in a mood of dasya, Krishna Das, servant of Krishna. You try, because that's shelter. That's permanent, the other is impermanent. Take shelter, permanent. Sat. Be tolerant or withdraw attention from asat and invest consciousness in sat. It's a very simple formula. Then take some practice. Now, supposing you're in the midst of dealing with somebody that's hateful and you're disturbed, it's going to be tough to follow that one because your mind is disturbed. So you have to do nice sadhana, because nicely performed sadhana helps to fix the mind on transcendence. And just like, for example, just like last Monday or coming up next Saturday, auspicious days, and you do nice seva on those auspicious days. And just continue. Sadhana every day and something special on those special days. And what happens is two things. You get purified and you get spiritual strength. The contamination is diminished and spiritual strength is awakened. And just keep doing that. And then you find yourself better able to handle situations where people are hateful, because you're more approaching transcendence and less covered by the modes of nature yourself. It takes practice. It takes faith to do that practice, and connecting with the right things and letting go of some of the toxic ones. So you do that which is doable for you, whatever it is that's capable of increasing and capable of doing without. And you keep going forward with that. Especially important is the holy name, because that's the best cleansing agent there is. That's a good commercial, right? When I speak that phrase that Prabhupada speaks, I can't help it. It's just part of my conditioning. With commercials that say they're advertising a cleansing agent. Stronger than dirt. But this is the real thing. Stronger than whatever you're feeling because people are hateful. Stronger than that. What's stronger than that? This is like really strong. Stronger than that. Boom, 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 boom. And just stay with it. You have something, Pratibha?
Maharaj, this is from your previous class.
I'm listening.
Okay, so familiarity with devotees. You talked about, so we can understand familiarity with devotees, familiarity with spiritual master. But what does familiarity with deities mean? Is that a very high stage, or can we also experience that? And if yes, what are some of the examples?
You're asking about the toxic kind, right?
Yes.
Because there's intimacy that isn't toxic, but you're talking about the toxic kind. So you want to know how to steer away from the toxic kind when dealing with deities.
Yes, and what are some of the examples? Like, I cannot imagine, with deities, how can someone be...
Oh, you haven't been around too long. By intimacy with the object of worship, one may become proud, one may become complacent, one may become distracted, and that's familiarity. So although I'm approaching the deity who, I know from philosophy at least, is not different than the form of the Lord himself, my consciousness is elsewhere. In fact, my consciousness may be even in the gutter while I'm doing deity worship. And so my reverence and respect is absent. Instead, it's routinized. I mean, it's if you can understand about mechanical chanting, you can understand about mechanical deity worship. It can become mechanical. There's some time ago, a really nice devotee, householder, was sharing, and it happened again the next time I visited that place. He said, I feel that my deity worship has become mechanical. I'm doing the, on time and ringing the bell in so many circles and this and that, but it's become mechanical, and I don't like it. That's familiar, because, the higher purpose is now weakened, and that becomes the routine, but the routine then becomes mechanical. And that's where the offense comes, familiarity. As opposed to seeing all the offenses is seeing something that's spiritual as material. That's where that's where it enters.
Thank you, Maharaj. And how to avoid it?
Good association, how to. And, keep your guard up. Don't become complacent. So how do you stay not complacent? By cultivating clarity in your purpose of service. Ask yourself regularly, repeatedly, why? As you're putting your hand in your bead bag in the morning, why? Etc. You stay with the why, then it gets deeper. It's not just as it was in the very beginning. And if you keep asking that why question and other features, then it has potential of minimizing the complacency part, because you're not just doing it mechanically. There's the higher purpose, and you're mindful of the higher purpose as you're doing. Okay.
Thank you.
We're done. We done?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the lecture. I was confused about one thing between two questions that were asked. One about Prahlad's mother having fallen after 100 years of association with Narada Muni. And then also that through the practice of sadhana and bhakti, it's like a cleansing agent, and that it's extremely strong.
Yes.
So I don't see how after 100 years of association with someone as like high as Narada Muni, she was able to fall, and that there was no cleansing applied to her.
Oh, there was cleansing. But she wasn't Shuddha.
What?
Shuddha sattva means pure goodness. She wasn't there yet. Cleansed? Yes. Fully transcendentalized? No.
Mm-hmm.
And why not? Is your question.
Yeah.
That's your question. Residual attachment. Affinity for matter is very strong. Now, what's the application point? What about you and me?
After 100 years with Narada Muni.
After however long, and whatever intensity, etc. If you really want to search this out, Madhurya Kandamani chapter 8. It gives the gradation of completely gone. And only when the stage of prema is reached is it completely gone. So she wasn't at the stage of prema. Prahlad was. He didn't forget. She became purified. That's and a permanent asset in addition. Whatever it was that she received was never lost, just became covered. Covered with what? Her attachment to the material. So when prema stage is reached, it's squeaky clean. And until then, there's residual, residue. And because of laxness in the hearing and in etc., hearing, chanting, remembering Vishnu, the residual came out. Madhurya Kandamani chapter 8. If you like that, there's a really nice analysis of all of that. I just heard Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj spoke a 3-part seminar on this topic. At different, he calls it crisis in the life of devotion, where there's stages that the juncture between this stage and that stage and that stage. And sometimes we're new people, and we want to, we want to become improved, but we're not necessarily focused on what bhakti can truly give us. So we can go up and then down. It's called unsteady bhakti. Oops, I don't like that. Down, then do up. So it's unsteady. Rising and falling of the waves of the material energy, and then the lessening of the waves of the material energy. But it's until it's in full transcendence that unsteadiness is going to be there. It's uncomfortable, so to go through transitions like that, but we have to be prepared because the waves go up and down. The unsteadiness is there, part of the transition towards ultimate perfection. And is it possible? The answer is yes, it's possible. It happened. Same, similar, not the same, but similar with Bharat Maharaj. Bharat Maharaj was at the stage of Bhava Bhakti and he fell. in his Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami addresses the question, how did that happen? And how did that happen? Listen, it's because of some offense in his previous life, which resulted in an anartha, or a block in his bhakti. It wasn't due to karma. He made a conscious choice arising from that anartha that was in his heart. And he stopped his spiritual practice. He didn't lose, but it was covered because he stopped. Therefore, we need the prema stage. That's Jiva Goswami explaining. This other reference is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explaining. And you can read them so you can understand more carefully how it's possible. It's possible.
Thank you, Maharaj. I had a follow-up question about the Bharat Maharaj story. So, in his previous life, he had some karma accumulated, which...
Not karma.
Not karma, okay.
Not karma. Because bhakti, that's, Jiva Goswami makes it very clear. Bhakti has the power to eradicate karma. It wasn't a karma issue.
Okay.
What was it? It was an anartha issue. Had lingering affinity arising from an offense in a previous life that resulted in an anartha in his present life as Bharat Maharaj, and he hadn't completely removed them.
Okay.
And circumstance gave him a choice, and he made his choice. He didn't have to. He made a choice, and he chose. Free will choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
You can look, if you have access, you can look up that really clear, short description in Bhakti Sandarbha. Jiva Goswami speaking of Bharat Maharaj and his anartha issue.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, I think we're going to end there. You have something more? Okay, let's do the one more.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, going off of what you just said, so until we reach that level of transcendence, we can't go back.
Until we reach that level of transcendence, then what?
Until then, we can't go back to the spiritual world. Until we're rid of all our...
Oh, no, I didn't say that. It's the other way around. It's the other way. If one doesn't reach that stage of transcendence, there is a possibility of falling down.
Okay.
Now, supposing, Krishna can take somebody who is not clean back to the spiritual world. Right? Yeah. There's no rule for him.
Right.
Like Putana, for example.
Yes.
Come on back. She wasn't squeaky clean. He took her anyways. And her brother.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Agasura.
Yes.
Come on back. That answer it?
Yes, thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Maharaj ki.